I'm about to start recording the meeting. How are you?
Okay, good, thank you. So if you don't mind, I'll have you do roll call once we, I think we'll give, I think, do we have anyone in the waiting room?
Not at this time, we don't.
I'll give Hyatt a second to join. I know we have one of the pieces we're talking about is his legislation. So we have a busy agenda today, uh, which is good because we need some good stuff off our plate. We're gonna start with the two interviews for the Commission of Municipal Internet Services. I think we have one opening in that position for that committee. So we got one
That's
op-
correct.
Okay, we got one
Can I
open.
ask you, I'm sorry, before we get started, just for clarity, there's only one vacancy? I noticed, okay, and Scott Jazarnbeck, who moved, would that be a third? Or is that we're talking about just common council appointments? Do you know?
No, I know we have one vacancy.
Maybe the list isn't up, maybe the list isn't updated.
So we're
online.
waiting. So in terms of the library, the library appoints their own person. I believe it's the executive director, but they just appoint a new executive director. I think they start next
Right.
week, so they're automatically on the board.
Okay,
Then we only have, I believe, 3 appointments. That's it.
okay. Currently on the commission page on the city website, it says it has 2 vacancies.
For the municipal internet.
Yep. But that's just might be not updated.
Yeah, there's been a lot of movement with that committee. Don't know.
If you could check and let us
No
know.
worries, just
Because what I don't want to see happen is if we have two individuals that are interested in being appointed, and then we only select one. I don't want to, have the other person be disheartened by not being selected if we have 2 vacancies to fill. So if someone can check on that, I'm not sure if that's something you can do, JR, or something we can just check on real quick, so that by the end of the meeting we've got when we have to make a decision, we know that we need to appoint 1 or 2. I was aware of 1, but I'm not sure. If we need 2, then we've got 2 people here today that are willing to do the job. So we can figure that out. And then we also have Hyde's ordinance and then local law D. So let's get started with road call. Do you mind calling the roll, please?
Sure. Or John, did you want to do that?
I'm trying to pull it up right now. Internet's slow on my end. Sorry, there was a power outage earlier.
I'll call the roll.
that's very relevant.
Yeah.
To
Between that and the bear that's stuck in the tree, I mean,
know.
they're out safely, so that's a good thing. Well, I'll call the roll real quick. We've got committee member Adams, committee member Hoey, committee member Samia,
Zamer.
Zamer. Thank you. Here, we're also joined by our legal counsel, JR, and forgive me, I don't have your name in front of me for the Albany City.
Yes. Yeah, no problem. Shaniqua Dowdy.
Thank you. So we have quorum. We have 4 of our 5 members here. First on our agenda is to interview Brian Duffy for the Commission of Municipal Internet. I think he's scheduled to come in at 5:45
Yes, he's in the waiting room now.
now. Does the committee want to move forward? I think we should move forward. Let's move forward and bring him in.
Okay. All right, he should be joining us.
Hello there.
Good evening, Mr. Duffy. Thank you for taking your time and your willingness to participate in our commission for municipal internet. I'm going to give you a little bit of time to introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about yourself, and why you think this would be a good position for you.
Sure. Well, my name is Brian Duffy. I've lived in Albany for quite a while now, almost 20 years. For that, I grew up in the hill towns and in New York City when I was a kid. Went to SUNY Albany, and I have a son here, and it's a great time. I work for New York State. I'm a director of workplace services at the New York State Office for Information Technology Services, which is a mouthful. But in my journey with the state, I've served in a number of different technical roles. From running, I had a major part in rolling out the statewide network for social services at the county level. I've worked with email solutions and a lot of different solutions relating to remote access, like VDI is a way to remotely access desktops. It was really crucial during the pandemic. I've also served on some different, sometimes we call them SWAT teams, but they're kind of task groups around solving a variety of different problems, from identity to pandemic response to I had some involvement in some of the technology backend stuff with that Schoharie Limo incident there was a few years ago that drove a lot of changes and processes and interagency collaboration. So I have a lot of technology expertise, and this is a topic that's of really great interest to me. When I was growing up, in my teenage years, I lived in the hill towns, Albany County, where when I believe it's probably 1989 when we first moved to that area, they didn't have individual phone lines, right? They had party lines. You had the share of phone line with half a dozen houses. It was really strange coming from the city where that hadn't been a thing for a very long time. And they had lagged behind for many years of my parents in that area. And in recent years, the situation for broadband out in the rural areas where there wasn't a lot of people has improved a lot. There's been a number of different grant programs and different programs to improve broadband. Living in the city, you're right, where there's a lot of people here, a lot of needs for internet and access to internet, and it's something that the market hasn't done a particularly good job in fulfilling. During the pandemic, I'm a little league coach, and I encountered a lot of the kids that we work with in baseball weren't going to school, and they weren't able to access remote school, and because they didn't have their parents. Most of the cases that I was familiar with, the parents had internet access via their mobile devices, but they were at work. The kids didn't have access to anything, and you think about how fortunate my personal situation and my child's situation is that for all the challenges that we had to deal with in that environment, just basic access wasn't one of them. So when I saw the opportunity to try to help in some way here, I think I can bring a lot of experience to the table in a lot of different scenarios with both technology and in kind of the human factor of how do we get folks the services they need. Maybe there's public-private partnership opportunities. Maybe there's some programs coming on the federal side, but there's a lot of different. It's definitely an area of a real passion of mine. I hate to see, we live in the capital of New York. There's an outrageous amount of internet infrastructure out here, but our citizens don't have access to it. So, sorry, that was a lot of talking.
No, that was fine. That was fine. Any questions from committee members? Deborah.
Hi, thank you so much for your willingness to serve. Your resume is really impressive. Obviously, you have a lot of experience managing teams and task forces and staff, and that's wonderful. My question is, if this is something that you're knowledgeable about, or the commission points to, and not only the commission, but Chattanooga, Tennessee, as being like this star example of municipally owned internet. And I was kind of trying to read the history of it, and an $111 million grant, federal grant,
That's
helped.
a lot.
Yeah, with laying fiber cables, I guess.
Yep.
I guess my question is, do you have a vision for how Albany could have a world-class speed like Chattanooga? Are we going to have to start to really look at laying fiber down?
That's a great question. And I think from the way I look at it, one of the success factors in a place like Chattanooga, and another example are places where other commercial entrants were successful. Like Google had a very well-publicized nationwide rollout of fiber optic service across the country. And it was successful in some markets and not so much in others. And the key thing is understanding the assets and understanding what you have to offer. It's easy to throw up a service quickly, but to sustain it, there's a lot more to it. I believe one of the areas in Chattanooga that was unique, maybe not unique, but it was an advantage to them. They had the ability to, they own a lot of infrastructure and rights of way. So in New York, that's typically not the case. I know there was some movement on that in Albany with respect to the lights, the street lights and such. But generally in New York, the utilities own the lines, and those rights of way are extremely expensive to secure. So I think one of the things to really consider is how things like 5G, how you can leverage some of these different services together to as an asset that can make a sustainable service to partner with somebody with. Like, I think in Albany, one of the areas that may be a real asset is the number of rooftops we have between city, county, other stakeholders who may be participants in a municipal effort of this type. There's a lot of assets like that may allow you to quickly get an amount of coverage and find partners to operate this stuff. It would be difficult, coming from a government, IT background. I wouldn't want to subscribe to a service that the government was running for a number of reasons, but most notably, it's not really our business. Like, the government is very good at making capital investments, right, and executing on projects and kind of moving on. And the operational aspect of it, right, if you think about any government organization, right, getting money for the next thing, either through bonding or through grants, that is challenging, but that's usually more successful than trying to get operational funding to sustain something. And that's where the partnership aspect of finding entities that can actually run something like this in a way that you can leverage the benefits that the government has with capital investment and such, to make that sustainable and attract that investment, right? Because corporations hate capital. They don't like investing money. They love having people in place to run a service and getting money that's more than what they spend, right? That's right. But the risk of carrying capital on their books is really difficult. So I think that's an area where, again, I don't have enough knowledge of the particulars, but I think if you look at a place like Albany, you have areas where you may be able to sustain fiber, a fiber-based rollout, or maybe more cost-effective to do that. If you go out in, I live in New Scotland. I live right next to Engine 11. Houses are separate enough that could probably go either way, but when you go further out, you have households who probably want service, but they're too spread out for a wireless solution. In denser parts of the city, the idea of having to retrofit multifamily units with fiber optic connectivity and such, that may not be, that it may be a wonderful thing, but it may be too expensive to deliver in a time frame that makes sense, right? Because you always have the balance to, get something done and make it be sustainable versus having the ideal situation. So it's really nuanced, and it's really, I think, a key part of this commission will be understanding what assets are there, what can be leveraged, because there are a lot. Albany is a really unique place in that it's big but small. It's also very visible, so there may be partners who are really interested and participating, right? Because, right down the street, across the street from City Hall is Capitol, right? And if there's ever going to be investment of this at a broader scale, every city in upstate New York has this problem. So it certainly could be an asset. That could be an asset as well to attract participants.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions from committee members? Tom?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Duffy, for coming. We appreciate it. For any citizen of the city stepping up and willing to serve on commissions. Looking at your resume, I'm very impressed. But the one question I ask this a lot of people: do you have the time to put into this? Would you have free time to be able to follow through with this commission if you were appointed?
Sure, I believe so. I'll squeeze it in, kind of thing. And I do a lot of stuff. I'm busy at work. I do Little League coaching, and I try to be involved, and in church and my son's school and such. But it's an important issue, and I think it's definitely something I'm personally interested in. I'm willing to lean in to do my bit if selected, of course. But I would have to. I just want to know. I do work for the state of New York. I do have to get approval if offered to participate in something like this. My understanding is that's typically not an issue, but I just wanted to be forthright. If you guys have to move forward and that type of delay is not I'm not sure if there would be one, but I just want to be upfront about that. Just to set up appropriate expectation.
Thank you again. We appreciate it.
No problem.
Thank you. Any additional questions from any committee members or any members at large? No? Okay, I think we're in good shape. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you very much for your willingness to volunteer and share your skills and knowledge to move this effort forward.
Absolutely, my pleasure.
Thank
Have a
you.
great afternoon. Take care.
Okay, so we're a little ahead of schedule. That's a good place to be. Is our second interviewee in the waiting room yet?
Not yet, he's not.
Can you reach out? Is it possible to reach out to him, see if we can get him on the line a little early?
Sure. Yep, I'll give him a call right now.
Yeah, we'll give him a minute or two. If not, then we may jump into some of the legislation. If we have, I don't want 15 minutes of dead air time. We can avoid it. But I know we're supposed to have Michael Bryan join us for the Anthony Street legislation. Is he in the waiting room, or is he available?
No, no one's in a waiting room currently.
And do we have anyone come to speak about the Historic Resource Commission deadline, annual deadline report? I think everybody forgot we were having a meeting today. That's what happens when you schedule a meeting after Memorial.
For the holiday weekend.
Yeah.
What time was, is it Evan? Was he
Yeah.
supposed to be
I think he's supposed to join us at 6.
6? Oh, okay, so 10 minutes probably isn't enough time for us to talk about one of the pieces. Or maybe it is.
I don't know. I'm gonna reach out to my former colleague and just make sure he's aware of the meeting. He's reminded of the meeting today, so he doesn't miss the opportunity to speak, because I know he was very passionate on that issue. So, say let's take 5 and see where we are. Okay, just quick update. I did get in touch with former council member Michael Bryan. He's gonna log on and join us in a few minutes. So we'll give him the floor to speak about the closing of Anthony Street, and then we'll continue with the remaining of the meeting.
Okay, I just spoke with Evan. He stated that currently he doesn't have the time realistically to take on anything else, so he's not going to be joining for the interview.
Okay, no, not a problem. Thank you, and
You're
thank
welcome.
you for his willingness to at least interview
Yes.
or put his name forward in the first place. We appreciate that, and if he's got time in the future, we'll definitely be more than willing to invite him back.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Yes, JR.
Yeah, I just wanted to correct myself earlier. So there seems to be 2 vacancies now. Because Scott, I was reviewing the legislative history. Scott was appointed by the Common Council. I apologize. I got confused with the PEG Access one, which is another commission that I've been working on very feverishly. So I apologize. So there are, from what I understand, seems to be 2 vacancies. But I wanted to let council members know that the commission, the purpose of it was to do a feasibility and look into creating municipally owned internet. So on my last check of legislation, they're supposed to have a preliminary report due in 15 days. It's due in June 15th, their preliminary report. And then they're supposed to have a final report to the Common Council and the mayor within 150 days after that June 15th date. And then after that date, 150 days after June 15th, the commission exists for another 6 months and then it dissolves according to law. So this commission is more so a temporary commission. It's not to run the internet or anything. It's really just to provide feasibility.
Thank you very much for that clarification, JR. I think we've got, do we have anyone in the waiting room?
We do. We have Michael Bryan and Young Summer LLC.
Yes,
I think that's tied.
Yeah,
Tied, okay. So they should be joining us now.
okay, thank you. So we'll go back to vote on Mr. Duffy. I know when I spoke to Mr. O'Brien, he's got some commitments, so I want to make sure he gets an opportunity to speak on this because I know he was very passionate about this in his last term. So former council member O'Brien, I'd like to give you the floor to talk about Ordinance 12 5222. You're on mute, Mike.
Okay. Yeah, this became an issue actually 2 years ago. There was a proposed development at 60 Colvin that wanted to use Anthony Street for commercial access to the development. And we came in, we didn't have the documents, but we believed it to be true, and it turned out it was true, that, the developer came in arguing that Anthony Street had been a paper street for years, which was actually true, but that ignored the fact that all of the right-of-way of Anthony Street, by his previous name, Roseland Street, had been a right-of-way on city maps right smack through the center of what ultimately became Westland Hills Park. So our argument, our unsuccessful argument in front of the planning board was that being included as a city street right-of-way, not as yet a built street, makes it a street forever, was rebutted by the planning board, and they authorized the use of this entrance to Westland Hills Park as a commercial access to a commercial development. We then went back and did several things. It points out to me there were several learning points from it. The first learning point was that we raised the issue that we believed that Anthony Street was implicitly dedicated as a park when the city sought federal park money to make it the park entrance and mark it as such with a big monument stone. The planning board discounted that argument and said, show us whatever proof you had. We said, we don't have it. It's in the archives. They were not the least bit interested in looking it up. And that same night approved the project, which for other reasons, it couldn't get the bank to finance it. It never happened. But right now there is another project, the closed portion of Armored Garage, which seeks to be developed both for housing and for, strip mall purposes, which is legitimately zoned for. We are afraid that they may make the same argument of, oh, well, look, the old 60, 70, or 80-year-old maps show that as a city street right of way, even though it looks like a park now. So what we did, and Hyde was very helpful in this, we went to the archives and dug up the grant applications to the Federal Park Agency that created Westland Hills Park. And sure enough, Westland Hills Park was created in 2 grants, one in the early 60s, one around 1970, and it was the Common Avenue side of the park that got a federal grant, which in today's dollars would be worth millions of dollars, to make that end of that land a park and use that city right of way as the park entrance. And all of that, was included as part of this federal grant. Both the paving it, because it was nothing but dirt, it had never existed as a city street. So all of that was, the feds allowed money, park plan money, to create that as the entrance to the park, and then to do all sorts of park-like enhancements, the tennis courts, the splash pool, all of that kind of stuff at that end of the park. The galling thing, the thing that I found most galling, was when we raised this issue in front of the planning board simply turned to the advocate for the project, Dan Hirschberg, and asked him, well, Mr. Hirschberg, how do you respond to that? And he simply said, well, I spoke to somebody, I don't remember who, but somebody in the park agency who said the park grant did not include this Common Avenue entrance. Well, lo and behold, the engineering firm that did all the work on this federal grant, on the documents labeled with the federal grant number, was Hirschberg and Hirschberg. So to me, it served a lesson both as to the fact that the planning board needs to do its homework better. And it also served a lesson that we've got to assure that our city parks do not become victims to opportunistic development. So that's why I support Hyde's ordinance to formally dedicate. Now, we had researched park plan law, and there is such a thing as implicit dedication. And I would bet you that half the parks in the city of Albany, particularly pocket parks, have never been formally dedicated to any resolution or anything as parks. But it's clear, at least implicitly, which the courts have recognized, that they are parks and deserve the protection. Parkland, in order to be converted, has to go through a state legislative alienation process through 2 terms of the state legislature. And I think it's a very good thing that they have those protections in there, because otherwise parkland is nice land, and I think it could easily become victim to developments, but it serves a higher purpose as parkland. So that's where I am on this, and I think Hyde, who was very much involved with helping us research this, is aware of it, and that's why he's doing a formal dedication. I personally believe that it's already parkland, but I think with the threat of a new development right at Armored Garage on the other side of Anthony Street, I think it's wise and prudent to make it as clear as possible to the planning board and to Mr. Hirschberg or people like Mr. Hirschberg that this is indeed a park and it enjoys all the protections of parkland. So that's my view on it. Are there any questions?
Thank you, Mike. Before I allow for questions, I wanted to give the opportunity for Councilman Clark, if you want to add anything, about the legislation. I apologize. Normally you allow the council member to speak first, so I apologize that I didn't go to the proper protocol on that. But it's Mike, so I can never say no to Mike.
It's a joint effort, so I'm fine with that. Like Mike said, this kind of carried over from the last term, a lot of research on it. And I think just avoiding having to have litigation to have the court make a determination, and I think is best for the residents here in the board, best for the city, and just in order to make it clear that this is parkland, I think explicit dedication is the way. Mike gave a good history of that, so I'll just here to answer questions if there's questions.
Thank you. Bevo.
So, yeah, it makes a lot of sense to me. So closing Anthony Street, will that have any impact on cars being able to drive and park on that side of the park? Or
No.
any impact on like how the city maintains it or anything like that?
No, it shouldn't, because the city parks department has an agreement with DGS to do all the maintenance in city parks, including the roadways that are in city parks. So it would still function. It would look exactly the same. It would still function as a park access, parking for people who want to use the park. Because I know it becomes, a parking area for people who want to use the tennis courts, people who want to use the dog park,
Yeah.
people who want to
Go sledding
go to the Little League.
and yeah.
So
Um,
it wouldn't put any restrictions on park use. It
Great.
would just put restrictions on being a commercial access. And a funny thing too, if you look at that property now, Armory Garage did a development about 25 years ago that came right up to the side of the park.
mhm.
And if you notice, they have a gate built right into their fence. They've never used it. I mean, the gate is rusted shut now. So I think it was something where there was a possibility of it becoming a commercial access to Armory Garage. And then I think they saw the better of it and never used it as a commercial access.
All right, well, thank you. I fully support this.
Okay, thank you.
And just to add quick, so the way the city maintains it now, there's no sign that says Anthony Street. It's not plowed during a snowstorm until everything else is done.
Yeah, it's one of the last 3 times.
Yeah, and I think protecting not having further access on it will allow people to continue to park. I think that was one of our concerns, is that you have the overflow parking. So if you had cars trying to come in and out of the side, hinder that as well.
Okay. Are there any other questions from community members? Okay, so if there's no further questions, I ask if there's a motion on the floor to move this forward with a positive recommendation.
So moved.
Second,
Hi, Tom.
Anyone? So is that so? Sorry, I got. All in favor? One more time, please. I apologize.
I think Deb moved it and I seconded it.
Yeah, just want to make sure you're in favor, Tom. I didn't want to. Yes.
No, I
Okay.
seconded it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Sounds good. I always like to see the hands. Thank you. So
Okay.
that's five in favor. It passes with unanimous consent. Thank you. And thank you, former council member Mike O'Brien, for coming back and speaking to us today. It's good to see you.
Alfredo, when do you want us to schedule a public hearing for this ordinance?
Let's schedule it as soon as possible.
Okay, that would probably have to talk to Daniel about, most likely be the second meeting in June at the earliest.
Okay,
Okay.
sounds good. Let's get that moving forward.
Okay.
Okay, so let's go back to Mr. Duffy. Any additional comments about Mr. Duffy's interview? Yes, Deb.
I think he'd be an asset to the city. And he's obviously knowledgeable and has been thoughtful and had some creative ideas. And I hope we all vote in favor of him.
Thank you. Hyde?
Thank you. Sorry I missed the interview, but I did review his resume and he looks very qualified. And I think we're lucky to have someone with that background interested in this position. So sounds like the interview went well and I would support it as well.
Okay. Any other comments? Any other thoughts? No, I thought we're very lucky to have him be willing to volunteer his time. So with that stated, I ask if there's a motion to move Mr. Brian Duffy to the council with a positive recommendation to be a member of the Commission on Municipal Internet Services.
Make a motion to make a positive recommendation to move Mr. Duffy forward.
Second,
Okay. All in favor? Okay, it's unanimous. Thank you. And forgive me, I always like to see the hands. So thank you.
yeah, I had my hands filled before her, Fredo. I'm sorry.
Oh, that's okay. That's okay. I appreciate the fact that everybody's here, and I know that it was, there's a lot going on. So the only other thing we have on the agenda is local law D. Do we have anyone here to speak on local law D? So since we don't have anyone here to speak on local law D, let's put local law D on our June 8 agenda so that we can have someone come and speak on that, so we get better information. And with that, that's all I have for today. Yes, Hyde.
Thank you. Just for the minutes, anybody watching, can you just say what local law D is? So anybody that may want to come back.
The Historic Resource Commission's deadline for annual report on emergency demolitions. So I know we were asked to put it on today's agenda. So we'll move it for June 8th. That's next week. So we'll have time to get somebody in here to speak on it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other thoughts, comments, concerns? Yes, Councilman Adams.
I just had a quick question for clarification from the previous meetings a while back in regards to the permit parking. Now that we're going into June, is that now taking effect now for residents renewing their parking permits?
We'll have to check with Danielle on that.
Okay.
Because I know it's done through the county clerk's office. So
Okay.
I'll reach out to Danielle and just get an update on that.
And then also the other question was from our previous meeting before, did we also say that we were addressing some of the inclusionary housing stuff again back in committee?
Yes, we'll be speaking about it. That's on our June 8 meeting.
Okay,
We'll have that back on the agenda on the 8th.
okay. Thank you.
No problem. Any other thoughts, questions? Okay, well, I appreciate everybody being here. Thank you for your time, and see you again on the 8th.
Thank you.
Thank you.